Hey, Curtis with Fly Fish Food. We're going to do a fly today. Don't laugh at it because you want this fly in your box. I'll explain why.
Dude, that's a big brown.
All right, we will dive right into this one. So this is a kind of a style of fly that you can tweak to whatever color and kind of buoyancy that you want to build into it. But this was built based on a function. So this was a function first fly. I needed something that was relatively buoyant and could offset a really heavy sinking line. So I'll explain it when I'm done, so it's everything's put together. At the end of the tutorial here, I will tell you exactly how you want to fish this. So we're going to go ahead and just start with thread right here at the eye. If you want to get down to brass tacks, you probably want to put some super glue right there. Cheech stole mine, so I am going to just not use it on this one. But we'll take our booby eye. What I usually do is I'll tie these in parallel to the hook shank, give a couple wraps, and then just grab it, wrap, start to figure eight it down in there. And then you just start to crank on that as much as you dare, depending on how confident you feel about your thread. Okay, now that we've done a few figure eights, now we're just going to come underneath and lash those wraps, providing a little bit of lateral force. And then crank that down, and that's going to be set. So again, looking at this proportionally, you're going, what is this thing? Trust me, this is not about looks, this is about function, and we'll talk about how this fly functions. It is literally one of the easiest flies that you'll tie, but you'll also find it's probably one of the dark horse stillwater patterns. And so anyway, we'll move to the tail section. I originally was using marabou with this pattern, but I also wanted something that was a little chunkier, something that looked maybe more, that had more body to it than, say, a marabou like you would with a leech. So I just take this little polywog tail. These guys at Spawn have these through hairline. And again, you can mix and match the color schemes. This is what I would call the blank saver color scheme, where you've got a hot spot on there with black. Once we've tied that on, I'm going to grab my squish anneal, and this is the UV black. We have links to these down in the description so you know exactly what we're using, and even some color variations. You want to see some of the color variations. Then I'm just going to tie that in right there in front and work our way to behind the eyes. And then with this squish anneal, again, this, like, there's no rhyme or reason to this. It's not necessarily imitating anything in particular, although I guess it could pass as some sort of leech or whatever. And then the little rubber legs, I just like to preen them back a little. They're very unwieldy, so they're going to be going all over the place. And I want to take a wrap just behind the eyes. Now that's going to do a couple things. That will just make sure we're nice and full, but it's also going to make sure that we have something that pushes up against those eyes and kind of locks them in place a little bit more. And then just come in here and trim that excess off. Now you notice we've got some legs coming out the front, so whip finishing might be a little hard, but if you play your cards right, you can usually come up here, preen some of these fibers back, and then lock them in that way so that they're out of the way. And this is also another good time to throw in a few more wraps if you'd like. And then you want to end at the eye of the hook. And we'll whip finish. Now, don't go anywhere. I'm going to explain to you the rhyme and the reason behind this fly. And I've got a little straggler in there. Shout out to Renomed. These new stinger scissors, holy moly. You can get in, the tips on those, it's just insane. You can get into really some tight spots, trim off single fibers of hair, that sort of thing. We'll just give it 2 wraps to be safe, or 2 whips. And again, these Renameds allow us to get right in there. Okay, so here's our fly. This looks like a giant flaming blacked out turd, but it actually has some function behind it. So if you've ever used a sweep line, if you want to look in our videos, we talk about sweep or parabolic line from SA. Rio has some, Airflow has some. They're lines with multi-density, so they're full sinks. The most common one that we've used is a type 3 running line, then a type 5, and then it ends in a type 3. Therefore, they call it a parabolic shape that essentially when it sinks, you've got the belly of the line sinking quicker than the running or the tip. So as Cheech and I have been fishing these last few years, one thing we've realized is that, and the way one way you can fish this type of line is you have a buoyant fly on the point. So this is what I would call a buoyant fly. Still going to sink. Lines are going to take it down. This buoyant point fly will kick off the bottom and it will start to rise off the bottom. So as you cast all the way out there, you got to let your line get down and soak. And as it's doing that, everything's going to the bottom. And as that settles, this little guy is going to pop up. Now, the other thing that we'll use either an additional 1 or 2 flies ahead of this. So those would be droppers. And we tend to find a very heavy top dropper that's closest to your line. That tends to help kind of nail down the line on the bottom and again create more of a disparity in buoyancy between this guy and the line and the last fly. That little motion of kicking the fly upward without pulling it is, I think, an incredible strike inducer. And that's why this style of fly, it's a booby after all, but this one is proportionally got bigger eyes to the size of the fly we're tying. And if I could get bigger ones, I might even do that. You could try the tubed foam that could do that. Pair that with a leech on the top dropper with weight, and that will help kind of lock the anchor down. This rises up, and you will be amazed at the number of times as you cast out, let it sit, and let it sit, and then start your retrieve. After that retrieve, it's going to pop back up again. Boom, fish on. Give that a try. We'll have all the description. We'll have all the links and everything for the materials. And check us out at flyfishfood.com. Learn some stillwater fishing.